There's a lot of mystique about wines. So let's go through some of the hard data first and then talk about some of the mysteries and which of them may be valid. Now, the data is from the International Organization of Vine and Wine, OIV. In 2023, wine consumption of the top 10 countries is shown here, with units in million hectoliters, a hectoliter being 100 liters. Americans, I had to look that up. Yeah, whatever. So the USA is number one, followed by France, which, note, has about a fifth of the population of the US, so that's actually a pretty good haul. Italy, nearly as large as France and Germany, just a bit behind. Note that China consumes less than Argentina overall, despite having 20 times the population. You can understand where the vintners foresee growth in the future. Now, although this y-axis is truncated to make the decline seem huge, there has certainly been a decline in the area of the world planted with vines, down almost 10% in the last 2 decades. Some of that due to climate change that's been shifting the profitability of certain areas. Wine production is down. This shows the top producing countries. France number one, followed by Italy and Spain, along with the US. Then Chile a good bit lower, similar size to Australia, South Africa, Argentina, and Germany. Now this graph shows the distinct fortunes, however. The top shows international trade by volume, while the bottom shows trade by value. Volumes are pretty flat for years before starting to decline, but value shows a rising trend. The average price of wine has been increasing. The average price of wine shipments is up to 3.6 euro per liter, up from something like more like 2.5 some years ago. The cheap wines are becoming less popular, but therefore the sellers are making a little more money. Now, what is it exactly that people are tasting in wine? Back in 1976, there was a famous experiment called the Judgment of Paris, where French wine experts tasted top wines from Bordeaux and California blind. They didn't know which were the fancy, pedigreed, snobby French wines and which were the upstarts from what was then a wine backwater. Against all expectations, the California wines won. And these were experts tasting it. It was a huge event. It really propelled California up in the global rankings. It also demonstrated that some of the mystery of wine was just about people being snobs. For homework, I'd like you to please read this short, just 4 pages, paper by Roman Weil, who was an accounting professor at the University of Chicago. A slightly earlier version of the paper included the title, No Accounting for Taste. See, accounting jokes. Yep. Anyway, he provides results of a very simple experiment in comparing 2 wines, but in 3 glasses. Pour the same wine into 2 of the glasses, give the 3 glasses to amateur tasters who don't know which one is duplicated, and ask them to just identify which 2 glasses have the same wines. Now, the pairs of wines share basic characteristics: color, grape type, sweetness, age. But reviews of the wines used completely different word descriptions. So an expert apparently thought they tasted quite distinct. Now, the tasters were all amateurs. They're not professionals. But of course, they were enthusiasts who enjoyed being part of the experiment. And probably a lot of them had plenty of wines in their time. Many were affiliated with the university. They were often alumni. But only a little more than 50% of the people could even identify the duplicate wine. Then the experiment gave the tasters the descriptions of the wines, the reviews, and asked each person to assess which words were meant to describe each wine. So they got 2 descriptions and had to associate the wine with the description. Those were indistinguishable from just flipping a coin. It was random chance as far as anybody could tell. The tastes as described seem to have no apparent relationship to what people experienced. Now, as a statistician, I could quibble with some of the data analysis, but I don't think that's the real point of the paper. His point was trying to get through some of the bullshit of the wine writing. And I'm using that in the technical sense. A philosophy professor at Princeton wrote a book trying to define bullshit. Another economist, Richard Quant, published a 2007 paper titled On Wine Bullshit, where he identified words that he was certain were completely meaningless in describing the tastes of wines, such as base. Although note, he explained he wasn't sure whether this was bass, like the fish, or bass, like the musical instrument, because in English the same word can be given two pronunciations. Angular, bacon fat, scorched earth, spicy earth, zesty minerals, silky tannins, velvety tannins, precocious. The paper impelled a great deal of other research, arguing about wine descriptions, trying to figure out if they have any actual information content. For example, could certain words help predict a wine's price? Are there certain tastes which, however imperfectly described, make a wine more popular? There's a good deal of argument, but many words seem to be completely irrelevant as far as anybody can discern. Now, I don't want you to take away a conclusion that wine is all bullshit, rather that some of the discussion and mystique around the wine is. There are people who try to be gatekeepers, claim that it takes a lot of knowledge to enjoy the wine. But the judgment of Paris showed that maybe that's not enough. So I hope you can take away from this research that some of the enjoyment may be difficult to describe. You can try new things, make your own evaluation. Great wines might have very complex flavor, sufficiently complex that different sips might bring entirely new flavors to the fore. It's wonderful, but it's not simple to describe.